So we are live. We are live on YouTube and we are live on webinar as well, sir.
Yeah, I was just checking how many participants are there.
Yes, they are increasing because the YouTube link has come. Okay,
yes.
from 10 up to 19 it has come. I think better we start 20 is already there. All
Yes,
those
madam.
who joined may go away if we don't start in time.
Yeah. We'll begin. Narayan sir is here. Good evening, sir.
Just
Hello, good evening. Hello, madam.
Good evening, Narayan.
Hello.
Okay, that's good.
Hello, madam.
Sir, we are thinking of, shall we start?
Yes, we can start. Because I don't know whether Vijay sir will be joining now. He might join later. We will start.
Let them join. Let your president and secretary join a little later. At the time, you just welcome them
Yes,
in between.
yes, madam. Yes.
Sir, start, madam.
Sir, new man.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It gives me a pleasure to introduce today's chairperson, Dr. Saranya Devanathan, madam. Dr. Saranya Devanathan is one of the past presidents and eminent psychiatrist of Indian Psychiatry Society, Karnataka chapter. She's an active member of EIPS and worked as its moderator for some time. She is founder president of IAPP, Karnataka branch, and now chair of its Women Mental Health Committee. She is practicing psychiatrist at Bangalore for nearly 45 years. She has been practicing. She is a product of Jipper, Pondicherry, and Nemans, Bengaluru. She was one of the founders of Family Fellowship Society for Psychosocial Rehabilitation Services. She has been working for 5 decades with Association for Social Health in India. She was instrumental in starting family counseling centers, short stay homes, and women helplines. We welcome you to today's program, madam. Over to you.
Okay. It is my pleasure actually. It's just to see what is this session. This is the second of the psychopathology series, and that was in part classification. You know, as medical students, we all know pathology is a final diagnosis. Okay. But unfortunately, we have got a long way to go. Our pathology is now only little by little, it is improving. And we are right now only at ICD-11 or DSM-5. Nothing more than that, but we have long way to go. In the 70s, early 70s, when I was a student, first we should classify organic, non-organic or functional psychosis. Okay, now evidences have come. Today we are classifying as primary psychotic disorder and secondary psychotic disorder, which is because we know now all the even schizophrenia has got a pathological basis in the brain, the organic basis like that. Okay, and there are certain things like still at ICD-11 also we are only using the symptom cluster as for diagnostic criteria. We are classifying, but at least some relief like stress related, anxiety and fear related, mood related disorders like that, at least to some extent psychopathologically we are able to classify that. And of course it cannot be only a research thing, it should be clinically valid. Then we are using some other qualifiers so that it will be clinically useful for our day-to-day practice as well as for treatment. Of course, in practice, we have to take into consideration quite a lot of other factors like cultural, regional, religious, social, economic, and whatnot, like a grief reaction and a prolonged grief reaction. So those things will come up sometime. I don't know when it will get into exact practice, but right now we will do that. And then another best thing is right now in ICD-11 is like, the diagnostic thing doesn't change across the lifespan. So that the child psychiatrist and adult psychiatrist, they treat with the same diagnosis, which is a very good improvement, which I feel. Anyway, let us just see what it is like. Anyway, to do all these things, we will welcome Dr. Veda Shetagiri, who is an associate professor in psychiatry at MGH Medical College and Research Hospital in Hoskote and Bengaluru, and with 11 years of teaching experience. And she is very passionate about teaching students, and that is exactly why she is here. And thank IPS KC for using her for this particular program, so that not only our students, even all of us will benefit with our presentation and our teaching. And she has served IPS KC as an EC member for 3 years, and she has conducted the UG quiz prize exam so many times, and also she has contributed to that MCQs in psychiatry and psychology. Originally it was 1,000, now 1,555 plus 66. Okay, anyway, that's good. Of course, she has always delivered several motivational talks in the high school students and teachers. She participated in medical officers training programs, and she has published many articles and case studies. And our areas of interest are adult psychiatry, sexual dysfunction, women's mental health, and psychopharmacology. Over to Dr. Veda now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the kind introduction. At the outset, I would like to thank IPS KC for giving this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Shripati Bhatt sir, Dr. Somsekhar Bijjan sir, and our dear moderators, both Dr. Harish as well as Dr. Narayan, for this opportunity. Let me first start the topic with. So as the topic goes by, it is about psychiatric disorder, the classification of psychiatric disorders. So first we need to know what do we mean by classification. Classification is nothing but it's a process by which the complexity of a phenomena is reduced by arranging them into various categories according to some established criteria for one or more purposes. So basically, a complex phenomena is reduced to simple categories based on shared characteristics. Now, the second question goes, what is the fundamental purpose of doing any diagnosis and classifications? We need to have good classification in order to have effective communication with all our other health professionals, patients, and their caregivers. Clinically, we need to know about the classification as we need to identify the various disorders, the treatment, as well as prevention of underlying disorders. The third component being the comprehension, wherein we need to understand the cause as well as the processes and the development of all these underlying psychiatric disorders and their maintenance. Fourth, the most important, to test especially the treatment efficacy and understand the etiology. To add to some more, it also helps us to psychoeducate the patients and their families. It helps the healthcare epidemiologists to determine the incidence as well as prevalence of the disorders, also to distinguish one diagnosis from another, and to provide psychoeducation to the patient families and to the patients. Coming to, we need to know about different units of classifications. Although these terms might sound similar, but they all have a different meaning altogether. So the first one being the syndrome. It is a cluster of symptoms that can result from different disease processes, a group of symptoms which consistently occur together, or a condition that is characterized by a set of associated symptoms. A disorder is nothing but derangement or abnormality of a function. That is a disturbance in either physical or mental health, or functions, malady or dysfunction. Like for example, all our psychiatric disorders fit under this category. So syndrome, like for example, we have Down syndrome with certain set of specific characteristic features. Disease is nothing but a definite pathological process having a characteristic set of signs and symptoms. Disease will always have an etiology behind it. The causative agent or the factor would be known. Then coming to the diagnosis. Diagnosis is simply the opinion by someone who is been an expert in the matter, and he makes a diagnosis of the disorder, whether it is present or absent in a patient, or the procedure to decide whether or not a certain disease or a disorder is present. So there are two ways of classifying or making a diagnosis. One is the categorical, whether it is present or absent, as the terminology goes by. The other one, dimensional. a certain point in a continuum. Coming to, there are different types of approaches to classification.
Madam, there is a request to go slow. I
Okay.
think some of the students are finding it difficult. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So, can I start, sir?
Yes, sir. Continue, madam.
Yeah. So there are various approaches to the classification here. One is the etiological and versus descriptive, syndrome versus symptom, and third one being categorical versus dimensional. So coming to the etiological versus descriptive, two fundamental approaches are very important. One is the etiological, the second one being the descriptive. Etiology refers to, we already know that there is some presumed pathogenetic process which is already there, which is resulting in the underlying disorder. It is relatively quite easy to use as we know the causative agent as well as the etiology behind the disorder. So it has relatively few diagnostic entities. This etiological approach was first given in 16th century by a Swiss physician by name Paracelsus, who developed this classification system. He divided the psychotic presentations in three types of disorders based on presumed etiology. One, Vissania, two, insanity, and third, lunacy. Vissania is nothing but disorders that were caused by poisons, for example, substance-induced disorders. Insanity, the diseases that are caused by heredity, for example, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Lunacy, that is a periodical condition which is influenced by the phases of the moon, example, acute psychosis. Coming to the descriptive approach, it defines the disorders based on the clinical descriptions of the presenting symptoms. So this forms more the basis for our current DSM-5 as well as ICD-11 classificatory system, wherein we have certain patients who are presenting with various clinical descriptions, and based on the clinical manifestations that we make the diagnosis. So it has a greater utility. Emil Kraepelin earlier introduced this approach and had classified these disorders into organic syndromes and functional syndromes. Coming to the concept of syndrome versus symptom. ICD and DSM, like I said, they lack specific etiological concepts behind it. It is only a dimensional picture of the presenting manifestations that we look into. The fundamental diagnostic element here is the syndrome. So syndrome is nothing but a group or pattern of symptoms that appear together temporarily in many individuals. So these symptoms cluster together in a clinically meaningful way. So they may reflect any common etiological process, course, or treatment response. They may arise from various pathological processes, but they have certain set of symptoms that are common and are found in many individuals. Coming to individual symptom classification, historically, there have been multiple symptom-based classifications as well. One to name was Bossier de Sauvage's in 18th century. He arranged the presenting symptoms into numerous classes, orders, and genera comparable to the plants as well as animals. This approach had generated around 2,400 disorders each initially, which manifested as a single symptom. Coming to the last category of classification, that is categorical versus dimensional. In categorical, it is understood that whether the disease is present or absent. Similarity has to be established with a prototypical description of a particular disorder, which is taken as a marker to diagnose whether there is a presence or absence of a disorder based on the shared characteristics of a person who is taken as a prototype. Coming to the dimensional approach, there is variation in the symptomatology and it can be presented by a set of dimensions. For example, blood pressure, which is measured along a continuum from low to high. So the symptoms of a disorder will exist on a continuum from normal to severely ill. Dimensionality can be envisaged in terms of number of symptoms and severity of each symptom group. What are the advantages of dimensional approach? It helps in indicating the severity of the disorder, since it is based on the continuum from there is a certain measurement from normal to high. So somewhere it ranges from low to high. Like that, the symptom dimension is taken into account, which exists from normal to severely ill. So it also helps us in doing the research studies, and most of the instruments or the tools that are designed, either used in ICD-10 or DSM-5, have used this dimensional approach, and thus it helps to facilitate the research into the underlying etiology and the pathophysiology of an illness. Now, coming to, is there any comparison between medical and psychiatric classification? As we very well know, medical classification does differ from psychiatric classification, in the sense most of the medical disorders do have a pathological process behind it, as well as etiological process behind it. So when it goes by clinical syndrome, for example, in medical disorder, example would be migraine, and in psychiatric classification, it would be schizophrenia. By a pathological process, medical underlying pathology, and good example is ulcerative colitis, and in psychiatry, presence of the Lewy bodies or beta amyloid plaques can very well favor the diagnosis of different types of dementia. By deviation from any norm, it could be hypertension, or under psychiatry, a personality disorder. Hypothetical process wise, medical, we don't make any diagnosis as such, but under psychiatry, yes, dissociative disorders can be considered. By etiology, it is tuberculosis, as we very well know, and psychiatry wise, it is post-traumatic stress disorder, where the stress results, where stress becomes the etiology under the underlying illness. Since we talked about classification, we just need to know a bit about what is taxonomy. Taxonomy is nothing but the meta theory of classification, which includes systematic study of various strategies of classification. So there are different strategies that are followed for classifying certain disorders. So basically the classification is based on certain philosophies which goes by taxonomy, and they are: number one, the classical taxonomic philosophies; two, the numerical taxonomy; and third one, the prototype matching procedure. Coming to the classic taxonomic philosophies, here the candidate must meet exactly the set of necessary and sufficient criteria that define a given class. We call this approach as monothetic approach. In the second one, that is the numerical approach, the candidate must meet a certain number of criteria to qualify for a diagnosis. That is the polythetic approach. So because of this heterogeneous nature of our psychopathology, psychiatric disorders are usually classified under the second one, that is the numerical approach, which is polythetic in nature. Third one being the prototype matching procedure. Here, the diagnosis is made according to how close a candidate meets a prototype for the disorder. Now, what constitutes a good classification of psychiatric disorders? One is the reliability. The second one, validity. Third, utility. Fourth, ease of use. Fifth, applicability across the settings and culture. Sixth, meet the needs of various users, that is clinicians, researchers, and users of mental health services. Now, you might be wondering, what is this reliability? Reliability is as to how far the errors of measurement have been excluded from the assessment. So, diagnostic reliability can be improved by having operational standardized diagnostic criteria with structured interviews. Validity is nothing but how far a test can actually test what it is supposed to measure. So, meaning the nature of reality, it is again all or none concept. Then coming to the utility, utility is one of the graded concepts wherein we try to test that whether the classificatory system aids us in making the diagnosis for with respect to clinical outcome as well as good decision making. And the fourth one, the ease of use with which it can be used in field trials or research, or it can be applied across various populations. Fifth, the applicability across the settings as well as different various cultures. And it should meet also the needs of various users, I said, as to the clinicians, the researchers, as well as the users of mental health services. So I have given in detail the evaluation of evolution of psychiatric classification. Very salient contributions I shall cite out. So it goes back to 460 to 377 BC, wherein Hippocrates and his followers are actually generally credited for this first classification system, wherein 6 conditions, that is mania, melancholia, epilepsy, hysteria, phrenitis, and Scythian disease. These 6 conditions were actually classified by Hippocrates. And then they attributed this to different kinds of imbalance in 4 humors. Next, coming to in the year 1624 to 1689, Thomas Sydenham, also called English Hippocrates, he was the one who emphasized careful clinical observation and diagnosis and developed the concept of a syndrome. 18th century onwards, as I told you, this method was given by Bossier de Sauvages, who developed an extensive psychiatric classification based on the single presentation of an illness, and he was able to classify around 2,400 medical diseases. In 19th century, the diagnosis of moral insanity, the word was coined by James Pritchard, who also became popular, meaning disordered emotions or behavior. Next, coming to in 1808, the term psychiatry, very important, was coined by German physician Johann Christian Riehl, and from the Greek, this word is derived from Greek, that is psyche, which refers to soul or mind, and iatros refers to healer or the doctor. So 1840, the recording of mental illness in United States Census included, besides the physical illness, a category for insanity as well as normals. And in 1844, the institutions for the insane was formed in America. And 1856 to 1926, German psychiatrist Emil Kraepelin, he advanced a new system wherein he proposed 15 categories, and the 3 main categories out of which were dementia precox, as we very well know, mood disorder, as well as paranoia. In 1886 to 1950, the Adolf Meyer, he also introduced his introduction of Kraepelin's classification in US, followed by which in 1880, Census reintroduced the word mania, melancholia, monomania, paresis, dementia, dipsomania, and epilepsy. In 1970, together with the National Commission on Mental Hygiene, the APA developed statistical manual for the use of institutions for the insane for the first time. And very important, 1921, the American Psychiatric Association was formed. And in 1930, the word stress emerged from any endocrinological work that was carried out. Again, very important, 1945, William C. Menninger, he introduced a classification scheme for the US Army called Medical 203. If postgraduates are attending this webinar, then few of these names and their contributions are very important. Please make a note. This system was adopted by the Veterans Administration in the United States, and it was strongly influenced by the DSM. 1948, mental disorders were first introduced in the 6th revision of the International Classification of Diseases, that is ICD-6. In 1952, introduction of the first edition of DSM. In 1967, the present state examination was given by John Wing. And in 1970, the research diagnostic criteria led by Robert Spitzer at Columbia University. This is again very important. Let us now talk in brief about few differences between ICD-10 as well as DSM-4. So ICD-10, as we all very well know, it is internationally adopted by the World Health Organization, and it is followed by 200 plus countries. DSM-4 is from American Psychiatric Association. So with respect to understanding or the comprehensiveness, so it is basically the classification includes all sorts of disease and related health problems with respect to ICD-10. Whereas in DSM-4, it only speaks about the mental disorders. Presentation-wise, ICD-10 can be used for various clinical related research work, especially in the primary healthcare sector, as well as for field work. DSM-4 is a single document per se, and different versions are not available. Languages wise, ICD comes it is spoken in widely different languages, and multiple versions of the languages in different multiple languages it is available, whereas DSM-4 is available in English version. Coming to the structure, ICD has a single axis in chapter 5. So separate multi-axial systems are also available, 1, 2, and 3. Whereas in DSM-4, it is 5-axial system classification. And ICD-10 most frequently used across the world for clinical work as well as training purpose. Whereas in DSM-4, it is designed at least in the first instance for the American health professionals. Worldwide usage-wise, every country who is attached to under WHO has to report the basic morbidity data to WHO, whereas DSM-4 is most frequently used in research work. The content, as far as it goes, the guidelines and the criteria do not include the social consequences of the disorders. Here, the diagnostic criteria usually includes the significant impairment in the social functions. As we all very well know that now currently we are using DSM-5, but there are certain salient features which are very important with respect to DSM-1, 2. So I will just run through few slides on DSM-1, 2, 3, and 4 TR. So DSM-1 basically had 132 pages. It had 106 diagnoses into it. And the mental disorders were called as reactions to any psychological, social, and biological factors. And definitions were very simple, brief paragraphs with prototypical descriptions here. And it was influenced by the Menninger's Medical 203. DSM-2, again, it had 134 pages and 182 diagnoses. So 50 to 60 more diagnoses were added into this edition. So the rationale was to conform to the system that was used in ICD, almost similar with respect to the diagnostic guidelines with respect to DSM-1, and Mayer and Menninger again developed both of these editions. Coming to the salient features of DSM-3, which came in 1980, that is, it had 494 pages, 265 diagnoses. The rationale was to conform to the newest ICD here, and it reflected a shift from theoretical paradigm to a medical model. So DSM-3 actually coincided with ICD-9. So the goal was to introduce the reliability factor. Here, it was influenced quite a bit by research-oriented psychiatrists who felt psychodynamic orientation to be unscientific. Then coming to DSM-3R, that is which came up in the year 1987. It was made up of 567 pages and 292 diagnoses. Again, 30 more were added to the existing chapters. So the rationale was here to increase the reliability as well as the validity. So the categories here were renamed as well as reorganized, and significant changes in the criteria were known. This was again influenced by Dr. Robert Spitzer, and there were certain controversial diagnoses such as premenstrual dysphoric disorder, masochistic personality disorder, and ego-dystonic homosexuality. All these kind of multiple disorders were removed from this edition. Then came DSM-4 in 1994, which had again 886 pages and 365 diagnoses into it. And the rationale was to conform with ICD-10 here, and the inclusion of clinically significant significant criteria, new disorders were introduced in this version. Like for example, acute stress disorder, PTSD, bipolar 2 disorder, Asperger's disorder. Others deleted were cluttering, passive aggressive personality disorder, etc. So Ellen Francis was the chairman behind this. And DSM-4-TR, as we were quite, when I was doing my PG, it was DSM-4-TR that we all followed. So that came up in the year 2000, and it had 936 pages, 365 diagnoses. None were added to the existing version, and the text sections gave extra information on each of the diagnoses that were updated to maintain especially the consistency with the ICD. And this was under the influence of John Wakefield, and the DSM-4-TR was organized into a 5-part Excel system. So as I earlier mentioned to you, DSM-4-TR had multi-axial system. PGs, please note. So Axis 1, all psychological diagnostic categories are included. Axis 2, the personality disorders and mental retardation. Axis 3, general medical condition, acute medical conditions and physical disorders. Axis 4, psychosocial and environmental factors contributing to the disorder. And Axis 5, the global assessment of functioning. Now coming to the salient features of DSM-5, I'll just quickly run through a few of the slides and the latest additions in DSM-5 as compared to ICD-10. So the DSM-5 task force was officially convened in August 2007, and as I told you, it was chaired by David Gupper. The first step was to name certain work groups and give them some responsibility for finding out the specific diagnostic areas, and it was led by a member of the task force. So this ran for a 5-year period from 2008 onwards to 2013. The task force and the work groups, they frequently met in person as well as via teleconference, and all this is the result of the current diagnosis with all the added information. So DSM-5 would become a second paradigm shift, as it is told, for psychiatric diagnosis, as compared to DSM-3, which had been viewed as the first. So this has been viewed as the second paradigm shift, since it has incorporated a dimensional approach, that is a continuum approach. So several levels, some salient points added to this. It was approved by the Board of Trustees in the month of December 2012, and it was released on 18th May 2013. So DSM-5 is the major edition of the manual in last 20 years. So it contains 947 pages and 22 chapters, whereas DSM-4 had 70 chapters. So basically, it is divided under 3 sections. The section 1 contains introduction, historical background, development of DSM-5, harmonization with the ICD system, and the dimensional approach. The section 2 contains diagnostic criterion and codes. And section 3 has emerging measures and models, that is assessment measures, cultural formulation, any alternative DSM-5 model for personality disorders, and the criteria sets for conditions for doing any future study. So basically it is made up of 3 sections, 1, 2 and 3. 1 basically deals with all how it was developed, the history as well as the dimensional approach. 2, it is basically about the diagnostic criteria and the various codes. And third one is using different measures, assessment measures using various scales, the cultural formulation, and the future some criteria for the further study. Like I said, the DSM has always used ICD codes. Like for example, DSM-3 has used ICD-9 codes, DSM-4 has used ICD-9 codes, and DSM-5 uses both ICD-9 as well as ICD-10. But there is now no multi-axial system that is being there in DSM-5 anymore. And they have actually abandoned the Roman numericals, like you can see it over the screen, that DSM-5 is written now as whole numerical. It is no more written as a Roman numeral. So fewer total disorders, that is 15 new, have been added to the current version and 2 are discarded and 28 have been combined. Not otherwise specified disorders now called unspecified or other specified. So please make a note. So there are certain differences even with the online version that is available, and the print version is limited to around 1000 pages. There is a bibliography as well as the references are also available online, and all scales are also available online. Now coming to the ICD International Classification of Diseases, how did it evolve? In 1855, William Farr, he was the first to submit his report on nomenclature and statistical classification of diseases. In 1893, this Bertillon classification of causes of death was introduced by the French physician Jacques Bertillon. And in 1900, the International Classification of Causes of Death, wherein that was introduced. And in 1948, the recently created WHO, the World Health Organization, assumed the responsibility for ICD. So in 1949, the 6th revision that was published involved significant changes. It included morbidity in addition to mortality. The title was changed to International Classification of Statistical Classification of Diseases, Injuries and Causes of Death. It included a section on mental disorders for the very first time, and 1965 there was the 8th revision and 1975 the 9th revision. Now ICD-10 has got 21 chapters against 17 chapters which were seen in ICD-9. So the numerical codes started from 001 to 999 were used in ICD-9, whereas an alphanumeric coding, as you very well know, A00 to Z99 has been adopted in ICD-10. For example, F20.0 is paranoid schizophrenia, as you are very quite familiar with. It enlarged the number of categories which were available for the classification. So in volume 1, it contained the main classifications, volume 2, the instructions or the guidance to the users, and in volume 3, the alphabetical index. So basically it had only 3 axes. One is the clinical syndromes, that is the psychiatric disorders, axis 2, the personality disorders and the disabilities, and in axis 3, the general medical condition. So as you are very well versed, ICD chapter 5 structure 1 contained F0, that is F0 refers to organic set of disorders including symptomatic, that is dementia, delirium and disorders due to medical conditions. F1 refers to mental disorders that are due to psychoactive substance, one being the use, which includes even the dependence, and the 2 being the harmful use, substance abuse disorders. F2, that is schizophrenia, schizotypal and delusional disorder, which also includes acute psychotic disorders and schizoaffective disorders. F5 refers to behavioral syndromes that are associated with physiological disturbances and physical factors. That includes eating, sleep, sexual dysfunction, and mental disorders which are associated with puberty. F6 includes disorders of adult personality and behavior, which includes impulse control, JID, philias, sexual orientation, and factitious. F7, mental retardation. F8, disorders of the psychological development, which includes speech and language, learning disorders, motor, autism. F9, behavioral and emotional disorders with onset, usually occurring in childhood and adolescence. It includes ADHD, conduct, separation anxiety, reactive attachment, for example, tics, enuresis, pica, feeding disorder, etc. Now, there are few things that have been incorporated in DSM-5 against ICD-10. So here, the terminology dementia, the word has been replaced by neurocognitive disorders. So that, so I'm going to discuss now with respect to each disorder what has been added, the most important, significant ones. So this has broadened the range of etiologies, especially in most of the disorders that are seen in the elderly. So here they have even included traumatic brain injury, So 10 subtypes are included in this, and it can be major or mild. In DSM-5, still they continue to have the range of deficits in addition to the memory disturbances. Apraxia, aphasia, as well as agnosia are still included. But there is no criteria for rating the severity of dementia as such. So all these emotional disturbances are not included as part of the definition, although they are cited as associated features. More so, DSM-5 definition does not even include the duration of the symptoms. Second, coming to the harmful substance use or abuse, ICD-10, it requires an evidence that substance use is causing physical or psychological problems. In DSM-5, it emphasizes basically the recurrent use of a substance, whether there is role failure, use in spite of risks that are involved with respect to physical health, or the use is persistent, even if it is causing any type of social or interpersonal problems. So substance use and substance dependence, please note, now has been combined into substance use disorder in DSM-5. So there is removal of any the legal criteria, addition of screening criteria, and legality of specific substances in different jurisdictions should not indicate either the presence or absence of a mental or medical disorder. The third thing, schizophrenia. Here, the duration requirement, as you very well know, they have still rated it as 6 months minimum, and compared to ICD-10, which is 1 month. But they have removed this special consideration for, as we very well know, the bizarre delusions that are characteristic of schizophrenia, which is included in ICD-10, and special hallucinations. These bizarre delusions and specific hallucinations have been removed from DSM-5, and the subtyping of schizophrenia is also eliminated. So they have done the rewording of negative symptoms in an effort to provide more of clarity. So those blueless 5 A's, like for example, the affective flattening was now changed to restricted affect. So alogia or evolution were changed to evolution by asociality. So the second change is the addition of a requirement in criterion A that the individual must have at least one of these three symptoms. These 3 symptoms, one is the delusion, 2 is hallucination, and the third one being the disorganized speech. The subtypes of schizophrenia, like for example, paranoid, residual, undifferentiated, catatonic, all these subtypes have been eliminated. Coming to the schizoaffective disorders, the criteria now is based on the lifetime, whole of the lifespan is taken into consideration on lifetime of co-occurring mood symptoms and psychotic symptoms in patients with mood-free residual psychosis. So no longer any cross-sectional emphasis is being given to the current episode of co-occurring symptom. So this should lead to fewer patients receiving this diagnosis, unlike earlier. Next, coming to the bipolar disorder, here the inclusion of increased energy bar activity as a criteria of symptom of mania or hypomania is introduced. Also, addition of mixed features specifiers for mania, hypomania, as well as depression. Depressive disorders, DSM-5 has included here disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, a disorder which has been intended to decrease the excess of diagnosis of bipolar disorder, over-diagnosis of any bipolar disorder observed in children as well as adolescents. So in ICD, it has been classified as mild, moderate, and severe. And dysthymia again is renamed as persistent depressive disorder in DSM-5. Please note, dysthymia is now named as persistent depressive disorder. With respect to obsessive compulsive disorder, it was also moved out of anxiety disorders chapter, and you very well know now that it is placed under obsessive compulsive and related disorders. So this group also includes body dysmorphic disorder, trichotillomania, and a newer diagnosis like hoarding disorder as well as skin picking disorder. So OCD is now no more placed in anxiety disorders chapter. It is now placed in a new chapter called obsessive compulsive and related disorders. Here, this group also includes body dysmorphophobic disorder, trichotillomania, the hoarding disorders, as well as pulling disorder, hair pulling disorders, as well as skin picking disorder. In ICD-10, all this, the clear distinctions between the obsessions and compulsions were not very clear, so it is still retained under the same category. PTSD as well as acute stress reaction. Here in DSM-5, now they have actually removed this entity, and they have placed it in a new chapter called trauma and stress related disorders. So they say that qualifying traumatic events can result in the following disorder, and for the diagnosis of PTSD, these 4 criteria should be present. One is re-experiencing, 2 increased arousal, 3 avoidance of the stressor, and the persistent negative alterations in cognition and mood. In ICD-10, it considers a wide range of symptoms, including dissociation after exposure to the traumatic event. Coming to now the anxiety disorders, here separation anxiety and selective mutisms are again included in anxiety disorder, and anxiety disorders no longer need now age criteria of more than 18 years for the diagnosis. So 6 months duration should be used to be limited to individuals who are under the age of 18, but it is now extended to all the ages. So in ICD-10, we had this diagnosis, 2 of these diagnoses which were placed together, panic disorder and agoraphobia, which were unlinked. So the co-occurrence of these 2 disorders is now coded with 2 diagnoses. So the change was made because of substantial number of people who were diagnosed with agoraphobia who never had experienced any type of panic symptoms, although the diagnosis used to coexist together. So formerly called social phobia is now called as social anxiety disorders. Coming to the somatic symptom and related disorders, this new category has replaced the somatoform disorders. The symptoms to be medically unexplained was removed from DSM-5. Somatization disorder, pain disorder, undifferentiated somatoform disorder were all merged into a new diagnosis called somatic symptom disorder. So all these 3, somatization disorder, pain disorder, and undifferentiated somatoform disorder, are all 3 merged into a new diagnosis that is called somatic symptom disorder. So hypochondriasis has now become illness anxiety disorder. Conversion disorder was significantly revised, and the term functional neurological symptom disorder was added to the title. So it remains as dissociative disorders in ICD. Coming to dissociative disorders, derealization is included in the name and the symptom structure. Dissociative fugue is now a specifier of dissociative amnesia rather than a separate diagnosis. Coming to the personality disorders, now DSM-5, it is presented here in section 3, like I mentioned earlier. So for example, any typical patient meeting criteria for specific personality disorder frequently also meets the criteria for other personality disorders. In the alternative model, the essential criteria to define any personality disorder would be either a moderate or greater impairment in personality functioning, or the presence of pathological personality traits. In addition, a new diagnosis called personality disorder trait specific has been established, replacing the personality disorder not otherwise specified. Coming to autism and intellectual disability, now Asperger's is gone, so are childhood disintegration disorder and pervasive developmental disorders not otherwise specified. Now we use autism spectrum disorder with specifiers. So mental retardation has been renamed. Please make a note. Here it has been now called as intellectual disability or intellectual disability disorder, while IQ testing will continue to be required and a great emphasis has been given to it. Coming to ADHD hyperkinetic disorder, here the age at which the symptoms must be documented in children have been raised from 7 years to 12 years. In ICD it was 6 years. So Now I'll just quickly run through ICD-11 because I think we are running short of time. So International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Health-Related Problems, ICD-11. So ICD-11 has been implemented in a hierarchical database which reflects the hierarchical structure of classification. Here, all the disorders, not just mental disorders, like I told you, it includes also the medical aspects of the mental disorders and other contributing factors as well. We'll have both the definitions as well as the content about the diagnosis, the differential diagnosis, etc. The information to be entered in the database is through content forms which are developed by working groups, one for each node in the classification. So so how did this ICD-11 come into existence? In 2007, they made an advisory group. In 2010 to 11, some formative field studies were carried about. In 2012, the first draft of proposals was given to WHO website. In 2012 and 13, again they ran the field trials. In 2014, some final changes were added to it, and 2015, the approval by the World Health Assembly. Now, coming to the diagnostic code expansion here, it is done under three categories. Each character represents, as I told you, a level of hierarchy. So in ICD-10, the character is chapter-wise, alphabetic nature, which allows for 26 basic divisions of chapter from A to Z. Numerical decimal nature of other characters limits each level to 10 divisions each. So division of mental disorders into 10 blocks. I'll come to it sometime later. Then coming to the diagnostic code expansion 2, here ICD-11 says that it will no longer restrict any character places to 10. Instead, it will be alphabetic or else 2-digit per character. So consequently, 24 block divisions are expected. Former, it was F5 disorders. So, for example, behavioral syndromes associated with physiological disturbances and physical factors will now get into their own block. So eating disorders will get a separate block, sleep disorders will be subcategorized under a separate block, as well as sexual dysfunctions, which were earlier all categorized under one heading. So ICD-10 chapter wise, how it has been structured. So O5A, it has been basically given these alphabetical categories from A till Z, please note. So 05A is nothing but neurodevelopmental disorders. 05B, schizophrenia spectrum as well as primary psychotic disorders. 05C includes bipolar and related disorders. 05D, depressive disorders. 05E, anxiety and fear related disorders. 05F, disorders which are specifically associated with the stress. 05H, the bodily distress and psychological and behavioral factors associated with diseases classified elsewhere. 05G, the dissociative disorders. Then 05I, obsessive compulsive and related disorders. 05J, feeding and eating disorders. 05K, elimination disorders. 5L, sleeping disorders. 5N, sexual dysfunctions and compulsive sexual behavior disorder. 5N, acute substance intoxication. 5O, harmful use of substances. 5P, substance dependence. 5Q, substance withdrawal syndrome. 5R, substance induced mental disorders. And 5S, behavioral addictions. 5T, to continue, 5T, disruptive behavior and dissocial disorders. 5U, personality disorders of personality. 5V, paraphilic disorders. 5W, factitious disorders. 5X, neurocognitive disorders. And 5Y, mental and behavioral disorders attributable to disorders or diseases classified elsewhere. So there was one initiative of DSM as well as ICD harmonization. This is one of the most sensitive issues wherein whether the ICD should resemble DSM or DSM should resemble ICD. For both have distinct characteristics in its own way. So probably in some instances, the harmonization should go in one direction, either DSM to ICD or in others from ICD to DSM, either way around. So the necessary comparison between both the systems and the decision would prevail over other acts to the sensitivity of this process. For example, if one of the classificatory system has given a better explanation. For example, anxiety disorders are better approached by ICD as compared to DSM. DSM should make adequate effort to resemble ICD with regards to this group of disorders. Conversely, if the mood disorders are described very well in DSM, then ICD should definitely come forward to adopt them. So the WHO has addressed this issue directly by creating the DSM and ICD harmonization coordinating group that has included the members from DSM-5 task force as well as international advisory group from ICD-10. And the charge for this group was to facilitate the achievement of the highest possible uniformity and harmonization between the two classificatory systems. And it was recommended that both the WHO as well as the American Psychiatric Association should make all sorts of attempts to ensure that in their core versions, the category names, the glossary descriptions, and the criteria are identical for both ICD and DSM, since it is quite elaborate and it is very difficult to even memorize when there are two different classificatory systems which are spoken in so much of depth with multiple criteria. So the major tasks of this group were as follows. One is to identify effective mechanisms to share the information of both the diagnostic systems. Two, to find out any strategy or to narrow down the differences basically between these two diagnostic systems. Any differences are there in terms of the diagnosis, in terms of the criteria or the duration had to be, they were asked to make some strategies to narrow down these differences and to coordinate and make efforts towards harmonization of the two diagnostic systems was the specific recommendation of the decision-making bodies, and to provide a forum so that the difficult issues around harmonization can be discussed and the common approaches can be identified. Now, few disorders that are specifically included in ICD-11, I would like to share in few of the slides, next few slides. One is the catatonia. Catatonia has received a specific, special, as mentioned as a specific entity in ICD-11. Earlier, it was existing as one of the symptoms of schizophrenia under catatonic schizophrenia, as well as the symptom diagnostic criteria for schizophrenia. But here it is now given a separate diagnostic a place wherein it can be a component of mood disorder, it can be component of psychosis. Also, it can result because of anxiety or fear-related disorders. Second, coming to the bipolar affective disorder type 2, there was no clear distinctions as in bipolar 1 or as to bipolar 2 with respect to ICD-10 classificatory system, whereas ICD-11 has given separate diagnostic categorization for bipolar 2 as well as bipolar 1, which have been incorporated just like DSM-5. Compared to the coming to the body dysmorphophobic disorder, this entity was included earlier in ICD-10 under hypochondriasis itself, but clinicians were actually forced to diagnose these hypochondriacal disorders. They were actually asked to diagnose these body dysmorphophobic disorders under delusional disorder in case if the beliefs are to an extent of delusional level. So it did not have a specific place as such in the diagnostic category, whereas in ICD-11 it has been included under, as I mentioned, obsessive compulsive related disorders due to its distinct symptomatology. Also, some other disorders are also included in OCRD. Like for example, now the other new diagnosis that has come up is olfactory reference disorder, the hoarding disorder, and the excoriation disorder. None of these were found or specific mention in ICD-10. But this has been included in the OCRD, that is obsessive compulsive related disorders, as these disorders also share some common phenomenological similarities with other disorders. And excoriation disorder was included under impulse control disorders under ICD-10, but now it is subclassified under body focused repetitive behavior disorder. It is subclassified under body focused repetitive behavior disorder. This category of illness also includes trichotillomania as well as excoriation disorders. Now, complex post-traumatic stress disorder is one more newer entity that has come into existence. Here, earlier it was only post-traumatic stress disorder, but if the post-traumatic stress disorder continues persistently and the trauma is significant enough, even after the catastrophic event has been removed and it continues for quite some time, this disorder has been made a separate entity so that these set of patients can develop, they can have poor prognosis as well as they can develop secondary depressive symptoms or other spectrum disorders. The next one being the prolonged grief disorder that was not adequately described and it was subclassified under bereavement. So here again it has been included as a separate entity so that the normal bereavement should be distinguished from pathological one, and even if the patient ends up having a depressive episode, for the benefit of the patient, the treatment has to be started. So in this regard, prolonged grief disorder has been given a separate entity. Coming to the binge eating disorder, avoidant or restrictive food intake disorder, all these were classified under eating disorder. Now all these have found a distinct place as a separate entity under ICD-11. So the body integrity dysphoria and compulsive sexual behavior disorder are also classified under ICD-11 now. Conclusion. So the changes that were made in ICD-11 basically results in a significant advancement in the diagnostic classification as well as in mental health practice and research. Although this ICD-11 classification has incorporated various changes into the system, made a place for distinct psychiatric disorders, their causative factors, considered the etiology, the biological factors also have been taken into account, although not completely, as we all very well know that still psychiatric disorders are they have multifactorial origins. So no one can pinpoint and say that this disorder is caused because of the only this etiology. So it is multifactorial. Hence, still they have to make much more research-related work into the field, and many revisions need to be coming up even later. So two key issues that still remains unanswered is the causality of an illness as well as the thresholding is something that they have to address in the forthcoming issues. And although ICD-11 incorporates the issues of etiology in a number of ways, as compared to the previous updates, it seems to be a better representation of etiology-wise as compared to ICD-10. And now the ICD-11 classification is not entirely based only on the causality. Multiple factors are taken into account across the cultures, across so many other dimensions are looked into. So these are all the things that have been incorporated into ICD-11. Thank you. Thank you for patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Veda, for that elaborate presentation. Because there are not many questions, so I allowed you to go during the question and answer session also. But if there are some questions now coming up, Dr. Harish will be taking up. But before that, let me see. You have gone through the elaborate history and then concluded in ICD-11, which is a very good thing. Apart from that, you have said about what is syndrome, what is disorder, what is disease. I mean, this is something which you have clarified very well. And also you have given examples of various types of classification, like including etiological causes with medical as well as psychiatric diagnosis. I never knew that etiological causes will be there for psychiatric this one, because it is multiple factors usually. But you have given example for all those things also, which is a very good presentation as such. Okay, and those of you who felt it is too fast, it is available in YouTube and you can go through at your own space and your own time, because it is too much of history which has to be combined along with the presentation of the new ones. And of course, ICD level, you can take even WHO's course, which is a very good one because they give exactly what they have made advance and what are the evidences for it and who have collected it all across the all over the world. And also they give 2 typical case history with an animation, which you can take at your own pace. And of course, you have to score 80% to get a certificate for it. That also I recommend. And YouTube video of Dr. Veda's presentation also I recommend. Thank you, Dr. Veda, for an excellent presentation. Over to the academics.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any question and answer?
Thank you, madam, for such a comprehensive presentation. Yes, ma'am. There are few questions.
Okay.
The first question is from Dr. Santosh Kumar. He says it was a good presentation. So he asks, what is the best classification, categorical versus dimensional?
So I feel dimensional approach is more appropriate because categorical only states whether the disorder is present or absent. So dimensional approach takes clinical presentation into account. So it is, see, psychiatric diagnosis is basically based on two things. One is what you observe and what the patient manifests with. So no such single presentation, what I would say the clinical manifestation would include to an appropriate diagnosis with respect to psychiatry because symptoms are very much overlapping. So I feel dimensional approach, observation of the patient's symptomatology with the clinical examination as incorporated in DSM as well as ICD is more appropriate rather than categorical approach.
I will just add, and our scientific knowledge and psychiatry has not advanced so much to become a categorical one, but we are towards it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Next question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Next question is by Dr. Jaya. She asks, since COVID pandemic is a novel situation which has hit the entire human life in various ways, and every day we are confronting numerous bizarre cases affecting mental health. So as to mental health workers, how should we handle them? I think this question is out of today's topic. This is nothing to do with categorical or dimensional or classification system as such. Ma'am, are you willing to answer or shall I?
No. We will just answer telling that there are how to handle the COVID various situations. NIMHANS has released in February 2021 the updated version. Please go through it. It is available free on the net, and e-version is also there. Any other question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. No, ma'am. A few people had raised their hands. So if they are willing to ask a question live or put the question in chat box, so we can still go ahead. Dr. Kapil and Dr. Jaya had raised their hands. I think Jaya had already asked the question. Is Kapil still willing to ask a question? He can raise his hands once again.
Veena, do we have a facility for somebody to ask the question directly?
Yes, ma'am. If they can raise their hand, we can make them
Please
interact.
let them ask.
Kapil, can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Dr. Kapil, are you there? Dr. Jaya, do you have any other question apart from the one which is answered?
So till then, I will just add in the COVID situation how to overcome the anxiety and the stress. I understand as postgraduates, is she a postgraduate by any chance? Dr. Harish?
No idea, ma'am. Probably yes.
If she it's quite important question because most of them were posted, even being in as a mental health professional also, they were asked to actually do COVID duties and things like that in medical colleges. So I do understand the amount of stress that they were all going through. So it is just that you need to stay calm, take all the necessary precautions as much as possible, and go with a positive mindset. So I working in an institution like MBJ, even most of our students were also posted in these COVID wards. But the first experience definitely gives you a good experience altogether. So not to be too frightened or be tensed about the COVID situation, because we have learned to live with it now. So initially when there was a lockdown, we all had a panic situation as to how we would tackle this problem. But since now the vaccinations are all available for the healthcare workers and the numbers have also significantly come down, it should not cause any more stress to one, unless otherwise you are not taking adequate care and you're not taking adequate precaution.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There is one question by Dr. Santosh Kumar. He asked, why is hard copy of ICD-11 still not available?
It is
I
actually
would like to answer.
Yes.
When we are all globally going, without wasting paper and other things, why do you need it? Maybe some library might need it, but when it is a e-version is there, why unnecessarily go through the hard copy? There is no necessity. We have to grow with the time. Next question.
Yes, ma'am. And the same person asked, why was not much importance given to research diagnostic criteria, RDCO? I think that is what he meant, Santosh Kumar.
That is regarding the research, what he is trying to ask me, is it? See, most of
Yes,
the
ma'am.
technicians and the field workers that we often use is the usual ICD-11 criteria. But for research specifically, we use this other classification system. And because of the paucity of the time, that was 45 minutes that was allotted to me, and the topic is per se, it is too vast. So I did not go to actually include in depth. So it can be taken as a separate topic itself for discussion.
Definitely, we will do that soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, ma'am. There is one more question by anonymous attendee. He or she asks, sometimes it is difficult to categorize the patient in the first consultation. What is your suggestion to proceed for the diagnosis?
You can always have a differential diagnosis in first place. At times, the presentation may not be very clear, that can hint towards a diagnosis. And sometimes may still, I think, in spite of DSM-5 or ICD-11, having been into the field, there are so many other disorders still wherein the presenting manifestations may not be yet included in the disorder itself per se. So there may be some atypical manifestations of an underlying illness as well. So you have to observe the patient for at least for a span of 1 week to 10 days. And depending upon how the symptom processes evolve, we need to take a call, because there is no specific mention about subsyndromal diagnosis or prodromal disorders as such specifically mentioned in either of these classificatory systems.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Veda, can you share that ICD-11 guidelines, the link?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I will.
Okay.
Yes,
So that it will be there in the YouTube, and any student want to go through, they can go through.
I'll share the soft copy of ICD-11 as well.
Yes, please.
Yes, I will.
And of course, the whole webinar is available on YouTube. You can go at your own speed whenever you want, and some clarification if you need. Of course, you can address that. Veda, can you share your email ID so
Yes.
that they can ask further question also?
Yeah, my email ID is Shetageri, 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 Dr. Veda @gmail.com.
Okay. So those of who didn't catch it, they can catch it in the YouTube and write to her. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think last question is Dr. Ramesh Kumar, which madam has already answered, that he asked sharing webinar link. I think madam has just answered the question. I think that's for all today. I thank Dr. Veda madam to have accepted this opportunity or task. I don't know. It was a huge topic. She has made a wonderful job by making it simple and understandable. I thank Dr. Saranya madam, who has been throughout the series. She's quite active member in most of the webinars and activities. So she is quite academically interested and oriented. I thank you, madam, for your valuable inputs in this presentation of today's.
It's my pleasure.
It was really overwhelming experience for me, ma'am, that you chaired my session. Nothing like that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Harish, for this wonderful opportunity that you gave me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. So, Bijal sir, you want to conclude?
Nothing else. I thank the speaker, Dr. Veda, Dr. Sarana Madam, and all the participants on behalf of Indian Psychiatric Society. Thank you, one and all, madam. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And I thank Dr. Team Icon people and also TeleRadio team. Madam.
Veena, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bina and TeleRadio team. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Veena. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.